She was standing in the rain being humiliated until someone who never stopped for anyone decided to stop. And from that moment on, nothing was ever the same. That morning had started like so many others: grey skies, heavy air, and the old orange cart being pushed with effort by Clarice's small hands. The scarf tied around her head barely shielded her from the damp wind. The thin coat already showed dark stains where the rain insisted on seeping through. Every street corner was a battle, every indifferent glance a reminder that survival cost more than money. It cost dignity. Her worn shoes were soaked from the inside with each step, and even so, she smiled, like someone who still believed a good morning could make the world stop. She had no idea that on that very morning, someone really would. Since she was 14, Clarice had worked any job she could find: washed clothes, cleaned houses, sold homemade pastries at the school gates. She learned early that no one asks how many dreams fit into a lunchbox or how many tears dry beneath a thin blanket. Her mother, Donna Lourdes, was a fighter, the kind who faced the sun with her head held high and calloused hands. She pushed that orange cart through the streets like she was pushing their future, but her body began to fail before her soul did. A kidney illness left her bedridden, and Clarice became everything the house needed: daughter, mother, caregiver, provider, hope. At the market she was known, not out of pity, out of endurance. Older vendors respected her in silence. Regular customers would buy 2 extra oranges just to see the hidden smile beneath her tired eyes. But not everyone saw value in the struggle of a girl with simple clothes and knees stained from scrubbing. Some private schoolboys would pass by laughing, mocking her accent, her clothes, her voice. One of them, that day, kicked her cart hard, sending the oranges rolling like marbles between cars. Another recorded everything on his phone, laughing, like someone who never knew the taste of loss. Clarice ran, thought of nothing but saving the oranges. They weren't just fruit. They were lunch, medicine, the electric bill. She knelt on the wet asphalt, knees burning, frozen fingers trying to gather each orange like they were fragments of what little hope remained. The dirty ground clung to the hem of her skirt. Blood trickled from one of her knees, and still, she didn't scream. She just lowered her head and kept collecting, one by one, like someone who refuses to lose again. And at that very moment, something different happened. A black car with tinted windows and chrome rims screeched to a halt at the side of the avenue. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Amid the blaring horns and people's indifference, that car felt out of place, like time had cracked open. The rear doors opened with a soft click, and 2 men in black suits stepped out. Broad shoulders, upright posture, firm gaze. They walked toward the laughing boys. Without saying a word. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough. The teens went silent. One's phone trembled in his hand. Another stepped back, nearly tripping over his expensive sneakers. The street, just minutes earlier, filled with ridicule, now bristled with tension and anticipation. But what came next truly froze time. The rear window rolled down slowly. At first, only the reflection of the wet street was visible. Then, the faint outline of a man's face, stern features, neatly trimmed beard, unreadable expression. A metallic click echoed as a mechanical system activated inside the vehicle. A sleek, high-tech wheelchair began to descend, luxurious, elegant, but still a wheelchair. The man didn't need to stand to be noticed. He was already a legend. No one dared to say it aloud, but they all knew who he was. Achille Roman, a name that filled financial columns, ranked among the richest in the country, whispered in stories of power and silence, known for his coldness in business, ruthless courtroom presence, and a mysterious accident that had pulled him from the spotlight years ago. Since then, he'd become a ghost in a suit, always behind the scenes. He never showed up without reason, never stopped in public, never until now. Clarice didn't hesitate. She fell to her knees again, not caring about the pain, bones hitting the wet cement. Her hands trembled, trying to gather the scattered fruit. They kept slipping. Her left knee bled discreetly, yet she kept going. Anger, shame, exhaustion had all tangled together, but there was no time to cry. She had to save the oranges. That was all she had, everything she had. And then, as if time itself cracked, that same black car from across the street stopped dead. The engine's low growl silenced the boys' laughter. Rear doors opened with precise control. 2 uniformed bodyguards stepped out, tall, composed, firm. They crossed the street in unison, wordless. The students recoiled immediately. The game was over. One tried to hide his phone. Another stammered nonsense. None dared run. They were paralyzed by the presence of the men in black. Then the rear window lowered, revealing the rain-drenched reflection and the unmistakable face of Achille Roman. Neatly trimmed beard, smooth dark skin, piercing eyes, strong jaw. A small mechanism activated, lowering a custom wheelchair from inside the vehicle. He descended into the rain. No umbrella, no coat, no fanfare. The wheels glided over the slick pavement as his eyes locked onto the woman on her knees, clinging to those oranges like sacred relics. Approaching, Achille didn't speak to Clarice. He looked straight at the boys. His voice sliced through the air like a command. Pick them up, all of them, now. The teens froze, then obeyed. One by one they crouched, gathering the oranges in shame. Their hands trembled, shoes soaked. Clarice stared, confused, tried to keep picking them up, but Achille reached out, large, firm, surprisingly gentle, and held her arm with care. Get up, he said softly. She hesitated. His touch wasn't superiority, it was respect. From someone who knew the weight of standing when everything inside begged to stay down. She accepted his help, rose slowly, wobbled slightly. They stood face to face. Thank you, she murmured, avoiding his gaze. He glanced at her injured knees, blood mixing with the rain down her shins. Your knees. His voice dropped lower. It's nothing, she said, wiping with her sleeve. Mo, but thank you, truly. The boys finished collecting the fruit. One offered the bag without meeting his eyes. Achille glared at them, the same look that made CEOs tremble. Leave, now, and don't ever mess with her again, or you'll answer to me. He didn't shout, but every syllable hit like a sentence. They scattered like rats from a storm. Clarice hugged the fruit to her chest. Rain poured down her face, eyes wide, not from crying, from disbelief. No one had ever done that for her, especially not someone like him. The silence between them was thick with all that remained unsaid, and in the heart of a city that never stops, something was about to change forever. On the sidewalk, as heavy raindrops slid down Clarice's shoulders, the sound of laughter faded, replaced by a silence heavy with presence. No bodyguard had time to react. Achille had already pressed the side button of the van, and the hydraulic system began to operate. The inner seat shifted, revealing a black wheelchair with chrome details, just as imposing as the man who now settled into it. It was the first time in many years that the public saw Achille Roman step out alone in a public place, and even more shocking, under the rain, unprotected, in front of a scene most would rather ignore. Achille didn't look at the onlookers, not even at his security team. His eyes were fixed on Clarice, but not the way a man looks at a woman. It was the gaze of someone who, even from a distance, recognized a pain they once carried in their own chest. The wheels rolled firmly over the wet pavement. Raindrops dripped from the transparent glasses he usually wore in business meetings, now fogged by the humidity. As he approached, the uneven ground rattled the base of the chair, but he didn't stop. One of the wheels ran over a forgotten orange, slowly crushing it. To anyone watching, it looked like a scene out of a film. The man who never stopped for anyone, moving directly toward a stranger on her knees. The boys stepped back when they saw him up close. One of them swallowed hard. Another deleted the video from his phone as if afraid of the consequences. Achille raised his voice and defended someone who had become invisible to the world. No explanations were needed. His voice came out low but firm as steel. The teenagers, cornered by something stronger than shouting or threats, obeyed immediately. No security intervened. Achille's presence alone was enough. The boys picked up each orange with trembling fingers, avoiding eye contact as if his shadow had tripled with their shame. The ground was no longer just wet. It had become a mirror of their own cowardice, and each orange returned was a silent confession. Clarice, still confused, tried to make sense of what was happening. She was used to disdain disguised as kindness, or pity hidden behind fake charity, but this was neither. When she bent down to retrieve the last orange slipping from the bag, she felt a firm hand gently hold her arm. It wasn't the hand of a savior. It was the hand of someone who knew exactly what it felt like to be treated as if you didn't exist. Achille lifted her slowly, not focused on the wounds, but noticing every trace of strength carved into her face. and for the first time his gesture felt more human than corporate. The silence lingered, but it had transformed. What was once tension became reverence. Without a single word, the message was clear. The coldest man in the city, the untouchable business mogul, was defending a street vendor in full view of everyone, and no one dared laugh. When he gave the order, "Leave, and don't come near her again, ever," his voice didn't rise, but the "ever" struck with such weight that one of the boys nearly tripped trying to flee. Clarice, still breathless, held the fruit against her chest. Her knees throbbed, her hands shook. She didn't know if she was moved or simply in shock. What had she just witnessed? What was happening? How could a man who didn't even know her stop his routine, his world, to defend her, asking nothing in return? In the distance, traffic had resumed. Horns began to honk again, but no one there was the same. The people who had witnessed it stood frozen, and even those who didn't know Akil personally felt they were seeing something rare, a gesture that couldn't be bought, a fracture between two worlds, the cold, towering world of power and the everyday battle for dignity, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something no camera could predict. Have you ever faced a moment where everything seemed to fall apart, until someone unexpected reached out a hand? If this part touched you in any way, share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes, a true story begins when someone dares to tell theirs. Clarice's legs were still trembling when the last boy disappeared around the corner. The blood from her knee, mixed with the dirty street water, trickled slowly, almost without her noticing. Her hands, pressed tightly against her chest, held what was left of the oranges, like someone clinging to a memory, not a product for sale. The street's silence still lingered, but now it was a different kind of silence, the kind that comes when something improbable unfolds in front of too many eyes. Akil remained in front of her, steady in his wheelchair, as if he had no urgency to leave. The bodyguard stood at a respectful distance, alert but absolutely silent. No orders were needed. Nothing more needed to be said, except one thing. He looked at the scraped knee, the mud-stained fingers, her face trying to stay composed. His voice came out low, but with precision. "You shouldn't be here." Clarice frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Akil shifted his gaze to the wet street and spoke with a calmness that seemed almost out of place given the earlier scene. "This place doesn't recognize the value of those who rise, even when wounded." She took a deep breath, as if absorbing that sentence slowly, feeling the weight and strangeness of hearing it. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his blazer. The rain was picking up again, but Akil didn't seem to care. He pulled out a small white card, simple, no logo, just an address and a name discreetly printed. He extended it in silence, waiting for her to take it. Clarice hesitated. "What is this?" "Be there tomorrow, 9 o'clock. I'd like to talk with you in a different setting." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended, but it was sincere. Why would someone like him, a man of that status, in tailored clothes with security beside him and an aura that demanded respect without a word, care about someone like her? Akil took a few seconds to respond. His eyes never left hers. "Because even on your knees, you remained whole." Clarice lowered her gaze. Her trembling hand took the card gently, like someone receiving something too fragile to trust. She slipped it into her skirt pocket, unsure if she should even show up. Akil nodded slightly and began turning back toward the van. The wheelchair moved silently, controlled by a small side joystick. One of the guards was already opening the door to receive him. The city, little by little, resumed its rhythm. Cars passed, motorcycles honked, and the onlookers returned to their usual hurry. But Clarice stood still, staring at the card in her pocket, like someone holding a map to a place they never imagined being invited into. Later, back home, an old sheet served as a towel for her scraped knees. Donna Lourdes coughed in the next room, a dry, repetitive sound from someone who urgently needed medical care. Clarice lit the last candle. The electricity had been cut 2 weeks earlier, and sat at the small table with the card still in her hand. The wooden chair creaked, and the wind crept through the cracks, spreading the smell of mildew through the kitchen. The flame flickered, casting shadows on the walls, and even there, deep in a night like so many others, she knew this invitation was unlike any other. It didn't say clean this, drop off your resume, or give me your number. It was just be there. No promise, no payment, no excuse. That stirred something inside her. She thought of tearing the card, throwing it away, pretending it never happened. But the sentence echoed in her mind. This place doesn't recognize the value of those who rise. Maybe it was the first time someone had ever said that, looking her in the eye. When dawn broke, Clarice got up, before the sun. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. She wore the least stained blouse she owned, applied a little oil to her hair, and tied the same scarf she wore to the market. She left without saying where she was going, just left the rice on low heat for when her mother woke up. On the way, she thought of giving up many times, thought about the dark circles under her eyes, her clothes, the smell of worn soap, everything that might make her seem too small for that world. But even so, she kept going. At the building's front desk, the security guard recognized her. "Clarice, right?" She nodded, surprised. "Mr. Akil asked for you to be brought directly to him." She was escorted to a spacious elevator with polished mirrors and soft instrumental music. The doors opened onto a high floor where the city view looked cleaner than any place she had ever set foot in. And then, for the second time, she saw him. Not on the street this time, not under the rain, but behind a glass desk with 3 screens lit, a cup of untouched coffee, and his eyes fixed on her. Do you believe that a simple act of respect can change the course of an entire story? Leave a yes in the comments if this moment moved you in any way. Sometimes it's in a silent gesture that the most unexpected transformations begin. The mansion held a kind of silence that couldn't be achieved with acoustic insulation, but with fear. Every detail seemed designed to keep people at a distance. The modern paintings of faces that avoided eye contact, the muted sheen of marble floors, the faint echo of firm footsteps down an unnecessarily long hallway. Clarice walked like someone stepping into forbidden territory, fists clenched, eyes alert. The butler who received her didn't greet her with a smile, only a short nod, as if confirming her presence was noted, but not welcomed. Still, she moved forward to the main room, where a man was waiting, without even checking the time. Seated at a large, dark wooden desk, flanked by wide windows that framed the entire city, Akil looked more like a sculpture than a living person, his eyes fixed on a black screen, his hands clasped, motionless. Upon sensing her presence, he turned slightly in his chair, staring at Clarice with the same expression he'd worn on the street, serious but strangely attentive. He didn't ask her to sit, didn't offer coffee, no welcome speech. He went straight to the point, as if he didn't know, or didn't want, to pretend to care. "Socially, I want you to know that although I was outraged by what they did to you, I didn't call you here out of pity." The sentence hit the floor like a stone dropped in still water. Clarice remained standing, unsure if she was even allowed to take a deep breath. "I noticed your reaction. What you did to protect what mattered to you. You didn't cry. You didn't scream. Anyone else would have lost it. But you guarded those oranges like you were defending a child. That says more about you than any job interview ever could." She pressed her hands against the sides of her leg. Her voice came out low, barely audible. "I just did what I had to do." Akil gave a small nod, as if her reply simply confirmed what he already knew. He remained silent for a few seconds, then spoke again, with the same firmness as someone laying out a contract clause. "I want you to be my temporary personal assistant." The reaction was instant. Clarice blinked several times, took a step back, looked around the room, as if expecting to find a hidden camera. A nervous laugh escaped her nose. The first words she managed to form came out as naturally as they were impulsive. "Is this a prank?" Her tone wasn't mocking, just disbelieving, a reflex from someone who'd never been called for anything that didn't involve cleaning, delivering, or staying silent. But Akil didn't laugh, didn't backtrack, didn't take offense. He simply continued watching, like someone examining a system from the inside, then explained, with a tone almost clinical, "I need someone to manage my schedule, filter communications, understand what people don't say, and above all, someone who won't treat me like I'm disabled or some kind of legend. Out there, on the street, you didn't look at me like I was a myth or a victim. You just wanted to know if you could trust me. That interests me." Clarice's world began to spin faster. Still standing, she tried to process every word. She, who had been dismissed so many times before even finishing her first sentence, she, who had barely finished high school, now found herself in front of one of the richest men in the city, hearing this. Still in disbelief, she asked, "Why me? So many people with resumes, polished clothes. Why me?" Akil didn't hesitate. "Because you have an intelligence that can't be measured on paper, and a sensitivity that notices what others ignore. That's what I need." And also, because you never asked me for anything. That last sentence touched something she couldn't explain. It was true, she hadn't asked, not for help, not for a job. She just picked up her oranges and stood back up. And now she was here, faced with a choice. For a second, she wanted to say no, thought about all the things she didn't know, how she'd be ridiculed by the other employees, how she'd feel out of place in a space that wasn't built for her. But she remembered her mother's eyes that morning, still coughing, still weak, and the crushing feeling of walking out the door unable to provide even basic medicine. She took a deep breath. "All right," she said finally. Akil extended his hand, a firm gesture, formal. Clarice took it, her palms slightly damp. In that brief touch, more than a contract was sealed. It was the start of a coexistence between two worlds that were never meant to meet, but from that moment on, would collide every single day. It started that day, and it didn't start easily. In that house, among the staff, whispers began immediately. The new assistant had no degree, wasn't from an agency, didn't wear heels, didn't know protocols, and still, she was the only one who entered his office without being announced, the only one Akil responded to with full sentences, the only one he truly listened to, even when he disagreed. Clarice didn't fully understand what that meant, but slowly, she could feel it. With every email written, every silence interpreted, every unspoken instruction deciphered, she was carving out an invisible space, a space no one else could see, but she knew exactly how much it cost to keep. And the most curious part, the security guards, once expressionless, had begun to slightly bow their heads when she walked by. It was subtle, but it was a sign that something had changed, and anyone paying attention would notice. When someone sees your worth where no one else ever looked, it changes everything. If this moment between them touched something in you, leave a heart in the comments. To some, this might seem like just another scene, but to those who've ever felt invisible, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Over time, Clarice began to understand that the mansion where she worked was just as full of silence as it was of walls. With every hallway she crossed, it became clear that luxury served more as armor than comfort. At first, she avoided overstepping boundaries. She did what was expected, managed the schedule, prepared statements, organized documents. But between one meeting and another, she started noticing what no one else did: the stiffness in his shoulders during family calls, the way his eyes lost focus when certain names were mentioned, the erratic timing of medications that followed no schedule. It was as if the man behind the wheelchair lived inside a fortress no one knew how to access anymore. And even those who had built the walls no longer remembered why. One night, after a string of cancelled meetings and untouched dinners, Clarice noticed something wasn't right. He had shut himself in the office for hours, no sound, no movement. When she gently pushed the door open, the light was still on, but the chair remained motionless by the window. A glass cup sat nearby, half full of forgotten tea. Next to it, a pillbox tipped over, empty. There was no drama, no breakdown, just absence of words, of hunger, of any sign of life. She didn't ask if he needed anything. She simply entered, picked up the box, placed the correct medicine in one of the compartments, and put water on to boil. Minutes later, she returned with a simple tray holding his favorite tea, chamomile with lemon zest, and the silence between them. No thank you, no questions, just a quiet acceptance, as if care was a forgotten language still understood by both. Days passed, and the words came, slowly. "A good night," said with his back turned, a sorry for the delay, accompanied by a sideways glance. Clarice began to piece together a sort of map, emotional and invisible, of his signals. She knew when his tiredness was physical and when it was emotional pain. She knew when he needed silence and when he used silence to hide. More than that, she began to challenge him. "You're not living, Akil. You're just continuing to exist." The words were spoken one night without yelling, without anger, just a truth from someone close enough to no longer pretend she didn't see. He took a long time to respond. He didn't snap back, as he usually did, with anyone who dared cross his defenses. He simply held her gaze for several long seconds, as if considering the possibility that it might be true. And as much as it hurt, he couldn't deny it. That same night, almost as if he didn't want her to hear, he murmured, "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Clarice gave a soft smile, her eyes slightly teary, but didn't look away. "Because you saw me when I was invisible." The response hung in the air, suspended like a bridge built between two cliffs, For a moment, they were no longer boss and assistant, millionaire and survivor. They were two survivors of different pains, recognizing in each other something no one else could see. And from that point on, the mansion didn't feel quite so silent anymore. Some bonds begin in silence and still say everything. If you've ever experienced a connection that saw you when no one else did, share in the comments what made you realize it was real. Sometimes, a story told out loud can light the way for one still in the dark. That night, Akil looked for her and said simply, "Thursday night. I need you to accompany me to an important event." Clarice, caught off guard, hesitated. "Me? Don't you think it would be better to take someone more appropriate?" The answer left no room for doubt. "You read people like no one else. And in that ballroom, that's exactly what I need." On the night of the event, Clarice showed up with quiet elegance. A sober dress, light makeup, hair down. She didn't try to hide, but she didn't want to stand out either. It was the first time she'd be so exposed beside someone like him. The ballroom was too bright, too cold, the kind of place where smiles shine more than eyes. Akil entered like a silent storm, a sharply tailored blazer, neatly trimmed beard, unreadable expression. Many stopped to watch him, as if seeing a living legend, but all it took was one presence to change the air. Bianca. She appeared in the center of the room with the arrogant confidence of someone who once had everything and still believed she held some power. Her tight dress, heels hitting the floor like a gavel, an overpowering perfume. She walked toward Akil like someone stepping onto land she considered her own. "Akil Roman," she said, with a smile that never touched her eyes. Still impressive, even incomplete. Clarice froze. Bianca glanced at her, analyzing like someone choosing fruit at a market. "You brought company," she smirked. "Not your usual type, but it suits." The new Akil adjusted. Then, without even pausing for breath, she delivered the blow. "You know, everyone feels sorry. You were a force of nature. Now you're just an echo, half a man, trying to keep an empire alive, in a chair." Clarice's hands started to sweat, not out of shame but fury. She wanted to speak, but it wasn't the moment. She wanted to react, but it was his pain, and he didn't move a muscle. Only his eyes changed. Something in them dimmed, like a flame tired of fighting the wind. And in that instant, Clarice saw the indestructible man break from the inside. On the way back, the car felt like a tomb. The sound of rain tapping against the window felt like a gentle attempt to console. And there, in that intimate darkness, Clarice broke the silence. "Do you know why that hurt me more than what she said to me?" He didn't answer. "Because she didn't attack your legs, Akil. She tried to steal your dignity, but that she'll never be able to take." He remained still, as if still trapped in those words. But Clarice leaned in slightly, her voice now firm. "Your legs are only a part of you. What I see is much bigger. I see a man admired, feared, respected, but who also stopped his car for a girl selling oranges in the rain. A man who still feels, who still cares." Akil closed his eyes for a moment. Clarice continued, "You haven't lost what defines you. On the contrary, maybe you've gained what most will never have, sensitivity, and the courage to see the invisible." Then, without warning, he pulled her into a hug, strong, long, almost desperate, as if in that gesture he was gathering the scattered pieces of a heart no one else dared to touch. Clarice didn't hesitate. She hugged back with the same strength, as if she knew that moment didn't belong to him alone. It belonged to both of them. He whispered, voice breaking, "You're the only one who makes me feel whole again." On the way home, for the first time in a long while, there was laughter, light, sincere, like someone rediscovering the taste of air. And in that small instant, Akil Roman was no longer the cold millionaire, nor the wounded survivor. He was just a man, and for the first time in years, a complete man. When someone sees you beyond the pain, something changes forever. If this part of the story touched something inside you, write in the comments, "I am still whole," because sometimes all we need is a single look to remind us that we're still here. That night at the event seemed to open a window Akil had kept locked for years. For the first time since the attack, he truly laughed. Clarice, with her quiet strength, had broken an invisible barrier, but across the city, in a penthouse surrounded by luxury and bitterness, Bianca flipped through the event photos with a venomous smile. There it was, stamped in subtle headlines. "Who is the mysterious companion of the feared Akil Roman?" The press, smelling scandal like hungry wolves, dug deep. They found Clarice. They uncovered her past, her poverty, her humble origins. They learned she wasn't a trained executive assistant from an elite university, but a former orange vendor. Within days, the internet was flooded. Cruel comments spread like poison. She probably pulled the pity card. Another charity case turned bedroom story. Did the millionaire fall for the maid? Clarice, used to street-level disdain, wasn't prepared for this kind of humiliation. The kind written in headlines and spilled across social media like hot oil. Neither was Akil. Not out of shame, but out of fury. The headline said more about the world than about them. Steel Empire tycoon now shelters street vendors in his mansion. Emotional rehabilitation or dangerous romance. Company stocks wavered, board members pressured, lawyers suggested she be quietly dismissed. But Akil's response came dry, sharp, and final. She's not going anywhere. Only Clarice was already gone. She left in silence. No explanations, no final words. Not out of pride, but for protection. The pain she carried couldn't be put into words. How could she explain what it felt like to have her name? A name she spent her whole life cleaning with effort, dragged through the mud by people who never even heard her story. How could she keep looking at the man she loved, without feeling like a burden to him? The decision was hers, and it tore her apart. She left a simple note on the desk where they used to share tea in the late afternoons. It said, "Only, thank you for everything. I need to go back to being no one before you pay the price for seeing me as someone." And she left, with a backpack, the clothes on her back, and a pain with no name. Her face vanished from the papers, but not from his heart. In the mansion, under all the polished marble silence, Akil screamed for the first time in years, not because of the accident, not because of the past, but because that day, he lost the only person who ever made him feel whole. Have you ever walked away in silence so you wouldn't hurt someone you loved? Write in the comments, "I know the pain of leaving quietly." Maybe your words will help someone who's also trying to say goodbye, without making noise. Clarice returned home with sunken eyes and a tight chest. The dirt road felt longer, quieter. Her mother was still lying in bed, too weak to smile, but her eyes lit up when she saw her daughter. A soft glow, almost like a silent goodbye. Clarice held her hand, lay beside her, and quietly told her everything she had been through, not in detail, only the parts that helped her mother breathe a little easier. In the early hours of the morning, with a breath as light as the wind, the woman passed away, as if she had only been waiting for her daughter to return so she could finally rest. The pain that remained made no noise, only a harsh, irreversible emptiness. Now alone, Clarice tried to keep her hands busy, cleaning the kitchen, washing the bedsheets, organizing the few belongings left, but everything reminded her of her mother. Every corner of the house seemed to carry an echo, a gesture that would never return. The loneliness hurt like an invisible knife carving through her chest. Far away, in a mansion ruled by silence and control, Akil Roman was pacing through restless days. Since Clarice disappeared, something inside him had shattered. He couldn't focus. The hallways felt colder, emptier. The scent of chamomile tea she used to make no longer came from the kitchen. The bookshelf was out of order, and no one arranged it the way she did. Worst of all, her absence wasn't just physical. It was as if he had lost the only person who could see past the wheelchair, past the fame, past the scars. He listened to advice, read reports, ignored headlines. None of it made sense. Clarice's last words still echoed in his mind. "You saw me when I was invisible." And now, he was the invisible one, without her eyes around. That pain became his fuel. Not pride, not vanity, love. The kind that doesn't scream but persists, that doesn't beg but searches. And Akil went after her, because he knew letting Clarice go would be like giving up the only part of himself that still felt alive. It was on a grey-skied afternoon, almost identical to that rainy day, that something different happened. A car parked slowly in front of the gate, discreet, black, something no one in that village owned. The engine went quiet. Clarice stood up, heart stumbling in her chest. When she opened the door, there he was, the man who, even seated, could make the world stop. Akil Roman, dark suit, eyes sharper than ever, and the expression of someone standing there, not out of pride, but out of everything still alive between them. No words were said at first. They simply looked at each other as if needing one more second to believe it wasn't a dream. Her face was thinner, her eyes deeper, but something still burned in her, a flame that hadn't gone out even after the worst storms. Then he spoke out, no speech, no script. "You once told me I saw you when no one else did. And you saw me too, even through all the walls I built to hide my pain." Clarice, our eyes met in a way that can't be explained. From the very beginning, she didn't answer, just breathed deeply, holding back what was about to overflow. But he continued, voice trembling and steady at once, not to beg, but to offer. "I never believed in destiny, but something greater brought me to you, the woman who faced the world pushing a cart of oranges, who gave me dignity instead of pity. You came into my life and brought light, color, peaceful silence. You saved me, Clarice, gave me a peace no amount of money could ever buy." The emotion swelled, but it wasn't exaggerated. It was heavy, real, the kind of love born from ruins. Akil stepped closer, held out his hand like he was holding time itself. "I can't. I don't want to, and I won't go on without you. Come back with me, but not as my assistant. Come back as the woman I love, because I'd never be ashamed of you or of your story. It was that story that made me truly see you." Clarice trembled. Each word hit the places where she had hidden everything she never said. The invisible girl pushing oranges with bleeding knees was now desired, loved, respected. With tears in her eyes, she ran to him without a word, just embraced him. And a kiss sealed what words could no longer hold. It was a kiss of new beginnings, a gesture that erased the loneliness buried deep in the soul. In that moment, there were no mansions, no wheelchairs, no tabloid scandals, just two completely different lives, finally made whole. Clarice ran into Akil's arms like someone returning home from war. That kiss wasn't just about love, it was about healing. Two distant worlds finally touched without fear. In the days that followed, the press tried once again to twist everything. Clickbait headlines, invasive questions, cruel rumors. But this time, Akil didn't stay silent. He held a press conference, faced the cameras and said with unwavering voice, "This is Clarice, the woman I love, and if anyone wants to know about my life, start with the oranges." The room fell silent, and from that day on, no one dared question again. Clarice didn't return to the mansion halls as an assistant. She returned as a partner, a confidant, a companion. The house, once cold, now smelled of simple meals and echoed with unexpected laughter. Akil began to dream again. Clarice began to live again. And together they rebuilt something no money could ever buy, a home where love didn't knock. It walked right in and stayed. Some stories aren't about appearances, but about what no one sees. Clarice didn't win Akil with beauty or status, and Akil, so even without walking, was the one who moved mountains for someone who truly saw him. Because sometimes all a life needs is to be noticed. If this story moved something inside you, don't. Keep it to yourself. Like, share, and write in the comments. Those who see beyond pain recognize love. New stories are coming, and each one has the power to move your heart in a different way. Click the video beside this one and dive into another journey that will warm your soul. See you there.